Welcome to Meaningful Mornings. If you drive around Niagara Falls, you'll see bus stops, bus stands. And recently I've been noticing an ad where there's a pair of scissors pointing downwards. And underneath that, what is shared? Death by 1,000 cuts. Death by 1,000 cuts. And this is an ad for our healthcare system. That many cuts are being made to our healthcare system, and so slowly the healthcare system is dying, which means people will die also. But it doesn't happen abruptly in this immense way, but in a way that we don't even notice. Compromise is the same way. When we compromise on our ideal, our purpose, this is experiencing death by 1,000 cuts. We compromise a little bit here, we give in a little bit here. Eventually that turns into not having an ideal, to giving up. And so in Meaningful Mornings, we comprehensively train ourselves in long-term thinking, in long-term investing, that compromise, giving in, giving up, these are not options. And when someone starts to live like this, they are really living anti-Kali. Kali means fast. It is to live for immediacy, for the short term. But through such a community and culture, there's training in the long term. Kali also means conflict. The more of a long-term investor, thinker you become, you will find that you are less impacted by conflict. You will actually have more conflict in your life, because if you're a long-term thinker, that means you're interacting with more beings. But they won't be able to impact you. You will be deeper than them. In verse 1 and 2 of chapter 15, Shri Krishna is pointing out our disease. Our disease overtly is attachment. How we can reflect on this more is expectation. Whatever you're attached to, you have expectations from that. So if you find that you have a lot of expectations towards a certain article, being, circumstance, know that that's a diseased relationship then. We have these bushes near our home where these caterpillars have essentially killed these bushes. And so our gardener was cutting down these bushes, and our kids were so fascinated by it. And I told them that if these bushes are not cut, then the rest of the trees will die. So be vigilant about expectation. In verses 3 through 5, Shri Krishna shares I've told you about the disease, but this is what I really want you to focus on, which is the medicine. The medicine is vairagya, or independence. How we can practice this has already been shared, but elaborating on observation. The disease is expectation. The medicine is observation. If you find that you have this expectation of your spouse, your child, your neighbor, and you catch yourself in that expectation, the more you observe this, the less that expectation will be fueled. It will be suffocated and die away in a healthy way. I'm in Boston right now. I'm about to meet all of our high school students, and I'm going to hammer into them. High school is synonymous with change. Their bodies are changing, their friends are changing, parental pressures are certainly changing. And so my theme for them is prepare, adapt, center. Prepare for the change, adapt to the change, and center means after you've tried your best, transcend that change. Don't be affected by it. So for us too, when we observe, this is a way of centering yourself, that change will not impact you. Yoga does mean balance. Bhagavad Gita, we may share that this is teaching yoga or balance, but understand that the end is not yoga, it is yukta. Not uniting, but united. Not balance, but imbalance. I'm pointing that out again. Balance implies that there's at least two entities there. Like many of you, you have to balance your personal goals and professional goals, correct? Such balance doesn't work. I speak to different corporations and I share with them, your personal goal has to manifest in your profession. You can only have one goal. That's the imbalance or yukta, the infinity, the oneness. This is where Sri Krishna is taking us. Please don't get lost in the means. Remember the ends. Infinity, and another word we've been using for this is independent. Infinity is not caused. Do you acknowledge that? And now, I think we do, but where we fail to continue with this rationale, infinity doesn't cause. If it's uncaused, it's also not the cause. Do you see the point of we're working so hard to balance? When we have vision or insight, what are you balancing? Infinity did not cause. You don't have to become happiness. You only have to remember you are happiness. Verse 6 is the visual for this, where Sri Krishna shares existence, awareness, joy. The sun has no relationship with this. The moon has no relationship with this. Fire has no relationship with this. The relative has no relationship with the absolute. They're mutually exclusive. Now I know you get it right now, but do you live like this? And here's where my own hypocrisy of how intellectually I'm so clear, but in terms of intensely knowing this, there is a lot of confusion. Shri Krishna tries to help us feel that you are not an individual. In verse 7. Mame vamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashashtani indriyani prakristani karshati. Joy. Mama, that is my, referring to Sri Krishna, eva, alone, amsha, part, portion, jiva, loke, this field for individuals. Sri Krishna is sharing here, it is through a portion of me that this multiverse is. That's the translation. Here's a reflection. The Creator pervades or expresses as creation. That's what Sri Krishna is sharing. And so, many of us, we worship the Creator. I can see some of you, you're sitting in your puja area where you offer worship. But does that same attitude or bhava continue with creation? I wrote to our Chinmaya Niagara steering committee that I'm not here in Niagara for the week. We do not use plastic bottles, as in single-use bottles, at our ashram. Now, many people rent our ashram, so I shared with our steering committee, we should implement a policy where plastic bottles are prohibited, even for those who rent the ashram. And I gave an example that we don't allow meat to come into our ashram. Now, there's someone who cleans the ashram who does eat meat, but I've told him, if you want to eat your meat sandwich, you have to eat outside. And he abides by that. And my point is that we have to treat our sense of worship not just in a controlled way, but in all ways. To treat creation to be worshipful also. Specifically, Jiva Bhutaha, a portion of Sri Krishna, is in each individual. Sri Krishna is telling you that he's inside of you, that he made you. Can you have negative thoughts then? If I know that Sri Krishna is in my head, how can I think negative thoughts? How can I think negatively about you? But he points out Sanatanaha, which means infinite or independent. Now let's come back to our rationale. In infinity, are there differences? Is Niagara infinity and Boston infinity different? Is LGBTQIA two-spirit, and you can keep on going with such divisions, is their infinity different? There are no differences in infinity. So, if Sri Krishna has offered a portion of himself to this multiverse to you, a portion of infinity is all of infinity. There are no portions. He's only using these words because that's what we're used to. Makes sense. Manaha Shashtani. And he changes the texture of this verse. The mind is the sixth. What are 1 through 5? Indriyani, that is the senses. Our sense organs are 1 through 5, and the mind is the sixth. Shri Krishna keeps zooming into multiverse, individuality. What is an individuality? It really is our mind and sense organs. The sense organs are the workers, me speaking, me seeing, but the manager of my sense organs is the mind. Now, whose the boss of all of this. A manager's not the boss. The boss of all of this, again, is infinity. Existence, awareness, joy. Prakritishtani karshati. Shri Krishna is sharing, this experience of ours is all prakriti. Prakriti is matter. Matter interacts with matter. That's where the word karshati comes. And he only brings this up to help us to reflect that Purusha is different than Prakriti. This is all matter. You are spirit. Like in our silence workshop yesterday, I was sharing, the first covering on our personality is described as Anandamaya, which means filled with joy. That is different than Ananda. Filled with joy means there's a layer that's filled with what that layer is not made of. So one has to realize that if there's matter, then there has to be spirit. And a great practice in doing this is step back. Step back from what you're doing. Create this space so that you can see more clearly. Pujaswami Tejomayananda had shared, to really know an entity, you have to step back from that entity. You have to give that entity space. If you're attached to a family member, you don't know that family member. To get to know that family member, take a step back, create some space. We'll think more about this from inspiration to application. Your application yesterday was to watch the recording of our Prithvi Utsava. How many of you did a little bit of this? Our Prithvi Utsava is very much about how creation is worshipful also. In my personal experience, when you start to worship an entity, you become detached from it. So if you find that you're an attached person, start to worship. That's the right attitude. Your application for this morning. I know how important this chapter is. So some years ago, I wrote 4 e-vicharas, or 4 sets of notes on this chapter, where I have given a 1-line summary for every verse. Those notes were shared on November 27, 2017, all the way up until January 8, 2018. I want you to find those e-vicharas, find those notes. They're somewhere. I'm sure you can, so that you have a more personal relationship with every one of these verses. That's your application. Shanti, 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 be joy.